K-1 visa applicants, what you need to know about the visa freeze. If you have a pending K-1 fiancé visa or you're thinking about filing one, you're probably panicking about the recent 75 country visa freeze that was just announced and is going to go into effect on January 21st. You're probably asking, is it even worth filing, or if it's already filed, what can I even do? Here's the thing. There's a lot of confusion out here. Most of it is wrong. I'm going to walk you through exactly how the freeze affects fiancé visas, what's actually happening at consulates right now, and what you can do to protect your case. Hi, I'm Jake. I'm the head attorney and founder of ImaVisa Law Group, a top-rated immigration law firm in the state of Utah. If you need help with your immigration case, there's a link in the description to help you fill out a pre-qualification form. All right, let's get into it. I'm going to clear up some points of confusion. So recall that there are actually two pauses that are ongoing right now, right? There are two separate restrictions affecting visa processing. There is the 75 country visa freeze that was announced on January 14th pertaining to immigrant visas only. Preceding that, there are two other pauses, though, that were ongoing. So on December 3rd, 2025, the Trump administration implemented an administrative freeze on all immigration processing. So this includes both non-immigrant and immigrant visas, including fiancé visas from 19 specific countries. These are Afghanistan, Myanmar, Chad, Republic of Congo, Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. And there were also significant but partial restrictions on a few other countries, including Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Tonga, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela. If your fiance is from one of these countries, then your K-1 visa is likely directly affected. Again, just to clarify, the January 14th announcement pertaining to the visa freeze, the one that is going to go into effect on January 21st, 2026, that only suspends immigrant visa processing, which a K-1 visa is not an immigrant visa. So let me give you the legal classification that matters here. The K-1 fiancé visa is technically a non-immigrant visa. I know that sounds confusing because you essentially use it as a springboard to get a green card, but legally the K-1 falls under the non-immigrant visa category. And you can verify this yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. When your fiance goes to the consulate, they complete form DS-160 instead of DS-260. That's the non-immigrant visa classification. If they were applying for an immigrant visa, let's say that you're actually married and you're applying for the immigrant visa abroad, in that case, they would file the form DS-260, right? So the K-1 is literally the K category of non-immigrant visas. It's 100% unequivocally a non-immigrant visa. Now let's talk about the reality, what's on the ground. Even though the K-1 visa is not affected by the 75 country freeze, I'm going to be honest with you about what I'm seeing in practice. Some consular officers are using what's called a 221G refusal to delay K-1 visa processing for applicants from affected countries. High-level overview, a 221 is an administrative processing hold. That's what that means. It's not a permanent denial. It means that the consular officer is putting your case on pause pending additional review or documentation. I am good friends with someone who is formerly worked at a U.S. consulate, and he shared with me private correspondence that he had with someone who currently works at the U.S. consulate, who informed him that the consular officers were instructed that they would be issuing 221G refusals for immigrant visa applicants who are from the 75 countries that are a part of the visa freeze until this freeze is lifted. Even if your fiance's country isn't on the freeze list, here's what you should understand. All immigration applications, including the K-1 visas, are facing more scrutiny right now, right? There is an additional policy of extreme vetting. What you're going to see are more extensive background checks, social media review, deeper security clearances, and higher rates of requests for evidence in the petition stage and potentially in the consular processing stage. Okay, let's talk about if your fiance is from a country that was not listed on the initial visa pause, so they're not from the 19 countries that have all immigration processing suspended. As long as your fiance is not from one of those countries, it's quite likely that the K-1 that you have filed will continue to process, all right? Let's talk about what happens if there's delay, right? If your K-1 case is delayed, there are a couple of options that I will suggest to you. Feel free to write these down. Option number one, this is usually my initial go-to, contact your congressman. In my opinion, this is your most powerful tool, and it's also the most cost-effective one. Every member of Congress has a constituent services office on their website that handles immigration inquiries. You can go to your congressman's website, click on the icon that says help with a federal agency or casework section. You're going to have to fill in your address and contact information to make sure they can tell you for sure they're a constituent. You fill out the privacy release form and give them all the information about your case. Once you give them this authorization, they can contact USCIS or the State Department on your behalf. Most of the time, they'll contact you directly and speak with you concerning your application details. And I found them to be quite helpful. Just personally, my own experience, I have found personally that most of the congressional offices that I have worked with have been very helpful. And worst case scenario, there is no cost associated with it, so it can't hurt to ask. Option number 2 would be to file a request with the Citizenship and Immigration Services Ombudsman's Office. The Ombudsman is supposed to perform duties to help individuals in resolving problems with USCIS or with the State Department, right? They essentially have an internal track of communication where they can propose changes in the administrative process of the specific government organization that they are a part of. And I have found them to also be quite helpful. All right, lastly, if you're experiencing a particularly egregious delay, we're talking well outside of normal processing time, you're not getting any response from the congressman, from the ombudsman, or from USCIS or the State Department directly, you may have grounds to file a lawsuit in federal court called a writ of mandamus. Essentially, this is a lawsuit where you can ask the federal judge to order the U.S. government to make a decision on your case. I just want to be clear that this does not guarantee approval at all. All it does is to have the federal court compel the government to make a decision on your case. Whatever you do, regardless of your options, I would make sure to keep clean records of everything that you do, including any and all communications with USCIS or the foreign consulate or the NVC. Make sure you keep track of your receipt notices, any requests for evidence, and obviously any documentation pertaining to your relationship. That's going to be really helpful in the adjustment of status phase once your fiance comes to the States to get their green card. Okay, let's say that you're in the planning stages, you haven't yet filed for your fiance visa. Whether you're filing new or you have a case pending, let me just tell you what you can do to maximize your chances of approval in this present political environment. So number 1, make sure you complete the form I-129F petition for alien fiance properly the first time. And the number 1 thing that you can do is to include comprehensive evidence of your relationship. Make sure you have the proof of your meeting in person unless you have a justification that the exception applies. I would include photos of your time together with different visits and different groups. I would include copies of your flight itineraries, boarding passes, hotel or lodging receipts so you can prove that you've met in person, right? Any screenshots or messages, calls, video logs, any message you feel comfortable sharing, I should say. If you have any financial records or any other joint documents yet, that's great. And then lastly, statements from friends or family or anyone else who can vouch for the validity of your relationship. Remember that the U.S. government wants to see this as a real relationship, right? They do not want you to just file a fiancé visa for immigration purposes. This needs to be a legitimate relationship. All right, lastly, once you have your I-129F petition approved and your fiancé has their interview scheduled, make sure that they take all of the required documents to their actual interview appointment. This is very important. Depending on which consulate you process through, some consulates require different documentation than others. Just at a high level overview, what I would try to have them provide: copies of their birth certificate in both English and their native language. Make sure you bring a copy of the original document of each of these documents that I suggest to you, and also make a copy. Here's a sample list of documents that most U.S. consulates will want you to bring. Make sure you bring your birth certificate, divorce decrees or death certificates for any previous marriages, police clearance certificates from every country you've lived in for at least 1 year, the completed medical examination, and if applicable, I would also bring a copy of the form I-134 affidavit of support with financial records. This is particularly important to show that your fiance is not likely to become a public charge. All right, let's talk about what happens if things don't go your way with the fiancé visa. If you receive a 221G notice, don't panic. Again, as I previously mentioned, this is not a permanent denial. It does mean that the consular officer needs more time or more documentation to make a decision, but it is not the end of the world. What you can and should do is to submit any documentation that they request promptly. Make sure you update any and all evidence that they request, and then I would just be patient. A lot of times 221G holds update very quickly, and sometimes it can take weeks or months. God willing, that does not happen in your case. Number one thing to watch out for in these interviews is any documentation that you submit should be legitimate. Again, consular officers are reviewing any and all visa applications in depth. Something to keep in mind is if your fiance has ever provided inconsistent information, let's say on previous DS-160 applications, or submits documentation on their resume or employment records that do not match what they claim on their DS-160, that could be a problem. If there is a finding of fraud or misrepresentation, that's going to be a bar that requires a waiver of forgiveness to overcome. That's a serious issue. So be honest, be consistent. Don't try to hide anything. Just make sure all of your documentation is legitimate and in order. Again, remember, the K-1 is technically a non-immigrant visa, so the 75 country freeze should not directly apply anyway to the K-1 fiancé visa. Truthfully, it is quite possible that there may be delays and extra scrutiny just as a matter of immigration processing in 2026. That's a reality. If your fiance is from one of those 19 countries from the initial visa pause, it's quite likely the K-1 is going to be frozen and no decision is likely to be made on that case. And that is as of January 2026. Again, things may change. That is a reality right now. In this environment, more evidence is always better. There's no such thing as over-documenting your relationship and application. If you're delayed, don't forget to ask the congressman or ombudsman for assistance. And lastly, just be patient. I know it's a stressful process. I know it sucks being separated from the person you love, from your fiance or your spouse, etc. If you need help with your K-1 case or any other immigration matter, feel free to reach out to our office. There is a link in our description to fill out a pre-qualification form. Like this video if this was helpful at all. Feel free to subscribe so you don't miss any other updates when there are USCIS policy changes. Try to drop a video pretty frequently, and we'll keep you posted if there's anything new. Feel free to ask us if there is any other topic you'd like for us to cover. Thanks so much. Till next time.